Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the festival and our second panel of the day, All My Relations, which is going to be discussing partnerships and collaborating with Indigenous creators and Indigenous groups. On the panel, we have Kerry Swanson moderating, and our panelists are Justin Lewis of Section 35 and Dusty Legrand of Mobilize, and Daviani Saltzman, who is an arts consultant. Please feel free to take photos. There'll be questions after. If you guys are going to take photos, just tag IF Indigenous Fashion Arts and hashtag IFAF22. Without further ado, I invite our guests up. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Swanson. I'm a co-founder of IFA, and I do fundraising. And partnerships are a very, very big part of everything I do and all of the work I do. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today. I've got Daviani Salzman here on my left. Daviani is a writer, curator, podcaster, consultant, who has worked at the Banff Centre for the Arts and the Art Gallery of Ontario. So she's really going to bring that institutional perspective on partnerships. We've got Justin Lewis here from Section 35, a streetwear brand based in Vancouver. And we've got Dusty Legrand from Mobilize, based in Edmonton. And so I'm going to start with just a question, throwing it out there to you to just talk about, really just the context for your work and how partnerships play into the work that you do. We'll start with you, Daviani.
Yeah, thank you, Kerry, for being here, and to Sage, and just really lovely to be in this space. I'm actually, I had spent many years in institutional settings, but I'm an independent curator and writer now, which is a very different perspective, but partnerships in the organizational setting were a huge part of what we did. And there's also a lot of contested space in that, in terms of artists wanting to work with large legacy organizations, and a lot of relationship building over time. Now, as an independent, I actually feel a lot more freedom in terms of reciprocal relationships and collaboration, and obviously a nimbleness that's slightly different from being in a space like Banff, or for me the AGO.
My turn.
How about you, Justin, if you could just talk a little bit about the work you do and what kinds of partnerships play into that work?
Yeah, I think for us as a brand, we've always had partnerships with all the way down to our production of products. But, kind of in the streetwear industry too, collaborations are a big thing, working with other artists and other brands. And we definitely do a lot of partnerships with artists, and they help us bring cool products, to life too. And we're big on all that stuff, so.
How about you, Dusty?
Yeah, I don't know. Is this working? Hello? Hello? Yeah, for me, it begins a lot like with my family, with my own partner, and how she's got my back when I'm out doing things like this. The relationships that I have with my children, and how that's fostered and inspired a lot of what I do, and even the dreams that I have, or even going after that has begun with them. And yeah, the collaborations are a huge piece. Some of my favorite stuff to do is that storytelling between two artists and coming together and seeing what it grows into. A lot of the collaborations that I've done have taken like months or even a year or 2 years to develop. And it's a relationship that grows over time and evolves into something. And so I think just as people, partnerships, relationships are so vital for success, for mental health, for taking care of yourself. You need those people around you. And past my immediate family is my siblings and my mother and my father, who also have my back in many ways through this brand. And even just here this weekend, even the marketplace, like I'm out there stressed out trying to set up, and my brother's got my back. He's doing it He's taking my U-Haul back to U-Haul right now. So it's very important, the people you have around you, to have success. And it's also important to not forget them and to remember them along that journey, because as you get busy and stuff, it's tough to do it by yourself, and you're never by yourself if you have good people around you.
I love what you're saying, and it's so relevant to this topic of all my relations in terms of a panel topic. And in the Indigenous context, we often approach all of our partnerships with that relational point of view, right? That we are, trying to create those kinship relationships even with our partners. If they're not family, like, we want to work in that way. And I think that is something that's really specific to Indigenous communities and really special about the way we work. I was wondering if you could give an example, and again, I'll start with you, Devyani, of a successful partnership and talk about what some of those ingredients were that made it such.
Thank you. I think really what was just said is what it should be in terms of small circles close to you and relationality and built on trust. I've worked in some large organizations, and as I said, now independently. And I think when you're moving fast in big spaces, sometimes you forget that kind of relationship making. So the example I'm actually going to give is very different from that, which was working as an independent curator with another organization, but us negotiating really a community set of values and positive intentions before engaging in practice. And this was curating a festival recently. And it was 5 of us. So this was a model that was not necessarily familial, but it was a model of us coming together and actually negotiating that agreement collectively among 4 curators and working collectively on a weekly basis where we listen to each other's knowledge sets and were there and care. And if someone couldn't have capacity, someone stepped up to it. So we weren't necessarily blood relatives, but we became a family. And it was that was the most successful kind of curatorial experience I've had. This organization initially wanted one person to lead the vision for this experience. And we all, I said, and another person said, this should really be a collective. There shouldn't be power within one voice. This should be dispersed amongst a group of people with different lived experience. So I hope the way we were programming is starting to be more relational. Yeah.
Right. How about you, Justin? What's an example of a relationship that you've had in a partnership that's been successful?
I mean, there's quite a few. Maybe one that's actually kind of just kicked off recently, and it's with Foot Locker. And that one's taken probably 6 months to kind of get to where it's at now, but it's allowing us to kind of expand the business, but reach new people, and then, in turn, it's also allowing us to expand what we can create. So there's a bit of a mutual benefit to both of us. Obviously, for retail, it's a tricky game, but it's. We're just starting with them, but they let us do a pop-up shop in their flagship down in Robson Street in Vancouver, and I felt like that was really successful. But the community came out, and the people were just so excited to see a native brand in like Robson Street on the main shopping place in Vancouver, and people were just like, "Wow, how did you get here?" And they've got a cool team of people that are like focused on the homegrown community and connecting with people and brands like us, and so I think it's been a bit of a journey with them, but I'm excited about where that relationship is going, and that's probably like a good example of what we're doing right now with relationships. So,
well, I love what you said too about mutual benefit, and so often Sage and I had developed this values-based entrepreneurship program for IFA a few years ago. And one of the things we talked about in terms of values-based partnerships is understanding your value that you're bringing to a partnership, especially when you might seem like the underdog and you've got a big corporation and you're a smaller company. But, the fact that you said right off the top that you recognize that mutual benefit, that you're bringing something really valuable to the table for a larger company, and that they also understand that, it to me is one of those secret ingredients. How about you, Dusty? I love the partnership that you had. And you don't have to talk about this next, but I do at some point want you to talk about your work with your son, because that was such a beautiful example.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about that one. Yeah, my oldest, he's 8 now, and I started like Mobilize just through Instagram in 2018, and I think it was like 6, 7 months in, he was 4 years old, and he designed his first hoodie, and it was just from sitting together. I would sit on my laptop, and I didn't know how to do graphic design, so I was on YouTube trying to learn, and he would sit there and he'd watch me, and he would kind of see how it would come together, how creating a graphic would then turn into something on a t-shirt. And so that inspired him to create this random drawing of squiggly lines, because he's only 4 years old. But yeah, it was just like abstract, but he would turn the paper different ways, and he'd tell a new story to me every time. And when he brought it to me, he said, "Papa, this is my first design." And it's always like a special moment for me to see that, and to be able to foster that too. For me, like even doing design, even when new drops happen, like I'm always so nervous and so scared of how it's going to be received, and how like I still just feel like, oh, no one's going to like this, like, and it's like, because it's a piece of you, it's your art. And so to be able to see him do that and to be confident in it at 4 years old, and then to design something, to wear it to school, it's displayed in the museum in Edmonton, the Royal Alberta Museum. His hoodie is displayed in there, and I don't think at 8 years old he can even grasp what that is, but like for me, that's so special to be able to see this little hoodie chilling in the museum. But yeah, it's true to any collaborations that I've done. It's very value-based. I have a lot of people reach out wanting to collaborate, but they're people that I don't know, that I haven't developed a relationship with Jordan Bennett, with Catherine Blackburn. These collaborations have come because we've become close as people, as friends, as relatives. And that's what's developed into a collaboration, and that's what makes it special. This weekend in my show, you'll see big, crazy earrings by Savage Rose that were gifted to me. And that began, Savage Rose was one of the first people that ever bought something from me way back in 2018, and has supported me from the beginning. And then trade happened between us for earrings. And then as I used them in fashion shows, then I was gifted all these crazy cool earrings. And so now I bring them along with me, and I bring them to these moments to just enhance the work and to share, and just to see Indigenous art mixed together and presented in new ways is kind of what I've done. And most of it just comes from these people who, they are my extended family. They are my people too. So I think it's very important that you stand by that. You stand by your values. And if people won't collaborate with you or partner with you based on your value system, then fuck them.
But reciprocity, right? Like that reciprocity. That reciprocity is such an important cultural value that that we bring into our partnerships, and it just builds on itself and keeps growing. And not everybody understands that. And so I wanted to ask you all. I find, having worked almost 20 years in Indigenous arts and culture, starting off at a time when like a lot of people weren't paying attention to what we were doing, which gave us a lot of freedom to do things in the way that we wanted to, but with a lot less money. And now there's a huge amount of interest in diversity and Indigenous art and culture, and a lot of people coming at us to partner and collaborate, like you've mentioned, people that you don't know, large companies, large institutions. So what do you look for when that happens? What do you look for? What is a good sign, or what's maybe a flag when that happens. You're nodding, so I'll let you go
I'm
next.
nodding. I mean, I think I'll also situate myself as Punjabi, mixed race, Jewish, who's, as you know, worked inside and outside of these orgs, but also I'm going to speak as a person of color in this context, but when someone is coming towards you, and that's been happening a lot more lately, I think it's really about values alignment. And if there isn't a fit or shared values, fuck it, like let it go. It's you have to protect your energy and capacity. And I think the foundation is really, it is a feeling of shared desires or trust. So when you have a lot of people coming to you, I'm not saying that's happening in my context necessarily in this case, but gauging well, protecting yourself, but also being in really open-mindedness for the potential opportunity while also gracefully being able to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part, kind of go back to what Dusty said, is it's people, right? And what kind of people, it takes time to build those relationships, to build that trust. Do their values align with who we are and what we want to be doing? Like, there's a lot of different things, I think, that kind of go into that. I think with the whole boom in diversity and brands and corporations coming at Indigenous artists, like, I'm always mindful of being tokenized, right? I think there's a big, box ticking exercise with corporations, when it comes to diversity. And so, just to, like, Foot Locker, it took me a long time to really gauge what they're, what they were doing and if it was meaningful or not, right? And so, like, when people reach out, if I don't know them, it takes time to get to know somebody. And, I think I've had bad experiences in the past and, like, aligning with people that ultimately don't have the same values, and it's, kind of comes back and burns you, right? So you have, like, these lessons learned from that. So I'm very careful in working with people, and I make sure it's definitely, like, aligning with our values, right? So.
Yeah, it's very true. Energy, your gut, listen to those things. They'll speak to you. They'll let you know. I had a project last summer. I was painting a skate park mural. It was originally supposed to be between Canada Skateboard, 7-Eleven, and Mobilize to paint this mural. And City of Edmonton has this corporation called Edmonton Events, and so they head up any events that are coming to Edmonton. It goes through them. So 7-Eleven and Canada Skateboard approached them. They wanted a skate park mural, so they got a hold of me to do it. So I invited some young artists in with me to come paint this mural. We developed a concept, some drawings, and then we presented it. And when we presented it, everything was cool. They loved the idea. And then 2 weeks before the event was supposed to happen, 7-Eleven sends this email that has all these points in it. They wanted Slurpee all in the mural. They wanted all this stuff. And it was supposed to be like an Indigenous art mural. And I just instantly replied to them and was like, no, like, this is what we're doing. If you don't want it, then we're out. Which resulted in, like, having a Zoom meeting and 7-Eleven trying to backpedal and be like, oh, you know what, it's okay, we can do it this way. But they had stepped too far. So I told them, no, it's still like this. Either Mobilize is out or you're out. Edmonton Events stood by, Canada Skateboard stood by me, and 7-Eleven got kicked out of the project. It was National Slurpee Day, and so they didn't even get to be a part of it. So that
Slurpees are Indigenous.
Yeah. Slurpees are, yeah. Slurpees are sacred. Yeah. That's why I was cheesed, because, like, 7-Eleven's in all our communities. It's in all our neighborhoods. Like, when I was a kid, I used to walk to 7-Eleven and get a Slurpee all the time. My big gulp, refill it. But yeah, so that was, like, one example of just that. And the reason they didn't want to do it was because they were worried about aligning, because some of the stuff we were putting in was a little bit political. And so they were worried, their corporation, their PR team was worried about 7-Eleven's brand being beside Indigenous art, and they weren't ready for that on a PR level. And so that was where it was too far for me, where I was like, nah. And so I went with my whole, well, fuck it. And they were out. And it happened again with Hockey Canada. I did a part of the World Juniors. I got to design an art display for them. And throughout the whole project, the budget was cool. They were down to do it with whatever I wanted. And then when it came time to pay it, they were like, our sponsors are going to have to pay the budget you presented us. And I was worried about that because Hockey Canada has a lot of oil companies a part of their big sponsorship bracket. And so I told them, no, like you can't pay me with oil money, so I need to approve your sponsors. And sure enough, they presented over like 2 weeks, 5 different sponsors that were just all the big oil companies. So I kept saying no, 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 and then Canada had to pay it out their own pocket because I wasn't accepting their money. I was like, they're not, because then they would have had to put their stamp. It would have been Husky Oil presents this Indigenous art jerseys, and I was like, I don't agree with that. It's not part of my value system. So through these experiences, I've learned that when you do stand up and when you do stand by your own values, the people in the room with you, they'll find ways to still make it work. And in both these instances, I was willing to lose the project to stand by that because I wasn't going to compromise and do that. I can't go and speak something or present myself in a certain way or have these values and cross it. And I think about my children a lot when I do these things. Because I was like, they're going to grow up and see that. And if they at home hear what I'm talking about, what I'm teaching them, and then as a business, I'm going and doing different things, it's not pure, it's not fluid. So I feel like that's kind of the way that I see it, as I look in the future in that way for them and see if Mobilize stands by what I'm teaching at home and if it's true to that. And so that's kind of where I'm based in.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I'll add an example of a really valuable partnership that we have at IFA is this collaboration. I'm wearing this design by Caroline Monet from our Simons collection, which we launched in 2020. And working with department stores is really challenging because they have a very specific model of how they buy garments and how they pay people. Often it's based on sales revenue. And so we really push them to work with us outside of that model. So we required that they pay artists half of their fee up front. The garments were provided to the designers to embellish or print on. In this case, this was a print. And we gave them workshops to support them in this process. So we did this whole other model. And Simons is really on board. And not only that, they took that model and started internally developing protocols for this kind of engagement. And some of you might know that I also work at the Indigenous Screen Office, and we published a document on protocols for working in the media, in the screen sector. And this is basically, we're saying, these are the terms of engagement. If you want to work with us, if you want to work with, these are very broad strokes, of course. Communities develop their own protocols, but we're saying, like, these are the basic kind of foundational principles for how we work. And I'm wondering if you, like, given that you've had some difficult experiences and you've worked with institutions that are difficult, do you have your own kind of terms of engagement? Like, this is how I work. These are my bottom lines. Like, these are the things I won't do. You mentioned, Dusty, oil and gas extraction. Like, you don't want to get paid through that. A lot of Indigenous organizations that I've worked with also have that as part of their sponsorship strategy. I'm wondering if there are other terms of engagement that you, even if they're not like, even if they're less articulated, like things that you think about before you approach these relations. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I have to say the Simons partnership is amazing. And
Yeah.
I had the opportunity of interviewing Sage, I think, maybe in winter about it. So just hearing about the process and the fact you set up protocols is great. In terms of, I can alluded to community agreements and intention before, but protocols in terms of agreement are essential for an individual or an organization. And personally, in the collective that I had just described, it was a festival in New York and Los Angeles for PEN, which is a global kind of arts and ideas advocacy organization. And the first thing we did was, well, I definitely, time agreements. how many, I mean, just going down to hours or number of days a week, or if there's a problem, having a clear protocol for how to voice that in a safe space, because you can't often voice that to the person you're direct reporting to, or even if you're in a consulting capacity. So creating a space where if there is a challenge in the relationship or the relationship is breaking down, you actually have an avenue or a person who's identified before you go into partnership to discuss it with and renegotiate. So those were some of the things we laid down before we went into programming this festival with a large US organization as a collective of independents, and mostly racialized independents. So those were some of the things we looked to.
It's kind of a tough question, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I think, Dusty's examples of, not to just steal your thunder here, but we've had to make some decisions too about working with people and refusing to accept money because it didn't align with, the values that I have and the messaging that we have. But, a lot of, I just go back to the people and, terms of reference and, not necessarily, but it's really about values. I go back to that all the time. As a business, obviously partnership, like you got to think about legal exposure, so there's a whole business side of things that's kind of boring that you have to be mindful of. So we have lawyers that help with stuff like that if you need that, but it's just, I think everything's on a situation by situation. Everything that comes, we take it one project at a time or one proposal at a time, and that's kind of how we work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like something that I was thinking about was like moving slow when they approach, not feeling the need to just jump on it and go. Learned that in hard ways a couple times of moving too fast, and so now I just slow down. I'll do my research on who that partner is, check out their website, check out who their partners are, see what kind of projects they do, see what they value. When it comes to like artistic collaborations, what I look for is weirdos. I just want the weirdos. It just seems true to who I am and who my kids are and how we are at home. We're just a bunch of weirdos, so I want to work with weirdos, and I feel like I've found that they've been some of the most beautiful people, and it's also like creating space for new people, and not always having to do these partnerships and collaborations with like the famous people, but just the people that you vibe with that have taken care of you. And I think that's just that kind of turtle mentality of moving slow and remembering that like that's part of why we have protocols as Indigenous people, is so that we're not missing things along the way, and that's part of that process to develop that for yourself and what that means. One example for me was like, I haven't gone back to Western Canada Fashion Week intentionally because they got mad that we smudged in the back room the last time we did a show. So I went back one more time, and this time we smudged on the runway, and I didn't tell them. I was like, fine, we're gonna smudge everybody here tonight then. And so that was just part of that, like, fine, here, we'll do this. And they keep inviting me, and I'm like, no, I don't like your show. I don't like what you guys are presenting, the way that they treat people in the backstage. These Indigenous Fashion Weeks are some of the best that I've been at as far as how people are taken care of and how the community comes together to do that. It's not people in the backstage yelling at you to get ready, hurry up and do this. And like, it's family. And I think it's very important. And it's what makes these moments so beautiful and so full.
Yeah, you hit my next question right on the head there. I was going to talk about, we've been talking about those larger partners, the corporations or the collaborations that we might do on the company side, but we also see our audiences as our partners and our clients, like, in terms of who's buying your work or who's who's listening to your podcast. We very much see those as our partners as well. And that's why we have this feeling of kinship and family when you're here, because we feel like we're in a relationship and we're getting feedback and we're listening to what people are telling us, and we have mechanisms for doing that. And I'm wondering about how you approach that. Do you see the people who buy your work or your audiences as your partners as well? And if so, like, how do you engage them, and how do you work with them to get their feedback? And Justin and I were talking backstage about how loyal your buyers are to your brand. And so I'm curious about how you create that loyalty and keep that partnership relationship going. You want to start this one, Justin?
Oh yeah, sure.
Or you can let Debiani go. She's always ready. She's a podcaster.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I believe like our supporters and the community, like they are our partners. They're the reason why we get to do what we do, right? So, you know, we get feedback from them. You know, we try to take everything. You know, I read just about every email that comes in. You know, I respond to DMs all the time. You know, so there's still that like down grassroots thing that we try to have as a brand. Is even as we grow, I think it's important that you still have and maintain that connection that your customers made with you as an artist and as a brand. As you know, even if you grow and you get big, like I think that's important. Like you can't lose sight of the reason why you're here, and it's because of the people in the community who go out and support your brand and buy your products when you launch something. And you know, and even some of like the collaborations, the artists that approach us are customers, right? You know, and so you have all these really cool relationships, and you know, definitely like I would say like we're community made, and so we never lose sight of that, and I hope we never do, right? Because I think, you know, we'll just stay true to that all the time. So okay, go ahead, Dusty.
What was the question?
Building that relationship with your clients, with the people who are buying your products.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, I had an answer too. Yeah, I think like through this journey, I've acquired so many like new cousins, and I think that's kind of how I approach it. Is like that these people like I see them that way. Like there was somebody here at the after party last night. And I was just hanging out with this guy I met, and he got a call from her, and I recognized the name because I packaged orders for her. And I was like, I know that person. And so I told him, and he's like on the phone with her. He's like, do you know Dusty? Do you order Mobilize stuff? And she was like, yeah, I do. And so she like came down, and we hung out, and it was like my first time meeting her in person. I've shipped stuff to her all the time. But like, I remember the people. I remember the names. I keep track of those things. I'm not so good on DMs all the time because I got too many kids running around the house, so I do my best. But yeah, I just try to like really value the people who take care of me. That's kind of the way that I see it. I've been, I'm like a Nietzsche that's acquired a little bit of privilege. I'm very privileged to be able to run a brand and to be doing that as my full-time thing. And so that's very special to me, and it's an honor to be able to do that, and it's an honor to be able to spend that time with my family. I only work like 2 or 3 days a week, and that's part of my value system is that my kids are young. I want to spend most of the week with them, and that was part of my dream of building this brand, was getting away from the 9 to 5 and creating a new model and finding a way to be efficient with it. And to honoring that. And so even with Mobilize, I'm trying to teach that like we don't need to work 40 hours a week. We can find ways to hustle and take care of ourselves and live more whole lives through it. And so, yeah, even with Mobilize, part of posting is just like talking from my heart and speaking from who I am as a person and presenting it in those ways. Making sure that I'm careful to not get corporate with it, because I hate that stuff. So Mobilize will always stay that way. It'll always stay part of like an extension of who I am, and it'll always be presented in that way. And yeah, Sunday night you'll see that. You'll get to see a bit of my values. I know there's choreography and stuff, but like I have a concept with models that when we do shows, that you're already wearing my gear. Now you go represent yourself and you're allowed to do whatever you want out there. You can do a backflip, you can run into the crowd, you can do whatever to represent yourself and to make sure that you're honoring your being as well. And I think that's part of just those moments. And when we come together, when we allow that, it becomes something that's unexpected. It becomes more beautiful, and you get to see really cool moments. And that's what I've witnessed along with this journey, and that's why I do things in the way that I do. Even with collaborations, I don't control what we're doing. A lot of the artwork or placements or things are dictated by that artist. As somebody who's doing clothes for the first time, I like to present it in that way. I'm like, yeah, how do you want this? Like, if you're making this sweater, what do you see and what represents you? So I try to pass that on in that way because it's special to get to do that, and I get to create product all the time. But when I'm doing a collaboration, I want it to be their moment. I want them to like take charge of that, and to pick those colors and to do that, and then just to kind of offer them the tools or skills that I have to assist that and bring it to life and see what comes. And that's part of like moving slow, is over time those things really change and grow into something, and that final product or that final collaboration becomes just so cool and such a moment at that point.
Yeah, I love what you said earlier, and just before Devyani answers, I just want to make a note of that as one of the values-based, success kind of formulas we talk about is often in this capitalist model, there's this grow factor that you're always expected to grow, to expand, to move fast. And I love what you said about just slowing down, because often that's when we do get into those bad relationships and those bad partnerships, because there's this pressure always in this social model that we're in, this capitalist model, just grow, 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 get bigger, expand. And that's not necessarily aligned with Indigenous values, and it's not necessarily the way that a lot of entrepreneurs want to grow their business. Some businesses, they want to stay smaller, mid-sized. So I just wanted to make a note of that.
No, 100%, and agree with that, because often we also don't do our best work under those conditions. When we can be smaller and slower, your creativity operates in different ways. And I was just loving listening and also thinking, who are my, I don't even like the word clients, but who am I working for? Because I'm not necessarily creating a piece in terms of fashion, but I'm creating public experiences like this. So the people I'm working with and for are the artists and the people in the audience, and creating an experience that feels intimate is often much nicer than trying to sell out a 400-seat venue. I mean, it's not about the numbers, but again, going back to this example of this recent project, they used to do 150 events, and we created 30, and we did it really well. And it was the best program we could create because we took time and we worked collectively. So whether it's a painting or a dance piece or a public discursive program, it is about slowing down, and it is about maintaining relationships and communication. So with the artists I'm working with, it's always having that authenticity and access, and not being overstretched in capacity where you're not being able to do things with love, I'd say. Yeah.
We are powered by love. We need money though, but so we need partnerships. But I was thinking about my dream partnership for IFA, which right now is to do one of those pop-up shops in Nordstrom's that they have. That's one of my dream projects right now. And I always have a kind of dream partnership in mind, and that kind of inspires me in the work that I do. And I'm wondering if you guys have any dream partnerships that you want to put out there, and let us know and let them know. They might be listening. Nordstrom's, if you're out there, you heard it here.
Dusty, you going on this one?
Me first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I got so many dreams. Yeah, and I think when you have dreams, you have to start talking about them. You have to begin manifesting them. I tell young people when I do like workshops and stuff that like manifestation begins with convincing yourself first, and then you can convince other people. And so that's kind of even part of Mobilize. In 2014 is when I started wanting to do clothes. And I started in 2018 with an Instagram, but in 2014, at home on my calendar, I wrote, I'm gonna be a world famous designer on a calendar, because I was like, I'm gonna like read this every day and I'm gonna see if I can believe it, and then let's see what happens after this. So my dream is to show in London Fashion Week. So that's what I want to do. So London, whatever, if you're listening, the reason I want to go to London is because that's one of Europe's weirdo fashion weeks. That's where all the crazy shit goes down. And so I want to bring that Mobilize experience to London. So
All right.
that's the one I'm going to...
You know,
I've been trying to manifest it for a couple years. I've been talking
okay,
about it.
well, you may have just
so.
told the right person, because I'm known to be a person who helps dreams make makes dreams come true. How about you, Justin?
Geez, like I have a long list of things. I mean, I've been lucky. Some of the collaborations I've done have been things that I've written down and set as milestones for the business. I think, if I look at like product collaborations, like a shoe collaboration has always been something. Like I'm a sneakerhead, so making a sneaker in collaboration with one of the big shoe companies would be really cool. And I think there's been some really cool stuff that's been in the footwear industry, but I think there's so much more that could be done. And as an artist, I'd love to be able to put like our print on something like footwear, right, and step into that side of things. The other thing I think would be, I'm a big snowboarder in the winter, so I'm like spend a lot of time on the mountains, and so I've always had this dream of designing a snowboard with LibTech, who's like my favorite snowboard company. So if you're listening, yeah. But I think his name's James Johnson. He's Alaskan, and he does some snowboard designs with them, and so I'm really inspired by the mountains, and I'd love to design a snowboard. So.
I feel these are going to happen.
I have a good feeling about it.
I think so. When you're thinking about like creating a line in terms of a line of design or fashion, I'd like to create a line of programming with HKW in Berlin, which is this wild interdisciplinary cultural space. And my friend Rana just programmed a whole season with them. They do like month-long seasons of programming around themes like the Anthropocene or the future of nations. And I would just love to go and spend 3 months in Berlin programming a line of interdisciplinary conversation.
That is such a good point that we haven't talked about, is how interested the international community is in the in Indigenous work, in the work coming out of Canada. Curious if you guys have done any international collaborations. You mentioned London Fashion Week is your dream, but is there any international stuff on your radar in terms of partnerships? Not yet?
What do you mean? Is like international as in the U.S. and beyond?
I guess U.S. or anything in Europe. I mean, Australia, New Zealand as well. There's such a kinship there. Like there are so many opportunities for collaboration. I'm just curious if you guys have even explored that yet, or if you're pretty much focused on in Canada, Turtle Island.
Yeah, I think the last rendition of Indigenous Fashion Week Toronto, when it was still called that, was a really cool moment because I got to meet my favorite designers in the world. So part of the questionnaire for being a designer with the industry meetings was like, if you could meet one designer, who would it be? So I put them there, which is Art Comes First. And they're a French design crew they live in Paris and London. And yeah, I got to have like a Zoom meeting with them, and I thought that was so rad. And we had talked about doing something together, and they had said if they were going to come to Canada that we could start building something. So that's really cool to be able to meet, because they're the designers that really inspired a lot of what I do. They do a lot of a lot of their textiles and things come from recycled materials in Africa. They go back to Africa and they get clothing and they upcycle them, they repurpose them, they bring new life to them, and they just make like the most beautiful trench coats and suits and just brilliant things. And that's something that I just trying to even move Mobilize closer to as well, to be more sustainable. And so that's one thing, but also like just in community creation through business, Australia and New Zealand have been very popular for my stuff. I have one of my favorite artists from Australia. Her Instagram's Coffin Birth. Her name's Charlotte. But we've been talking about a collaboration for a couple of years now and trying to figure out the logistics of that, because to ship to Australia is super expensive. To try to find ways to present it both in Australia and Canada at the same time. But that was so cool. It was somebody who I had been following her for like 15 years. It was someone who I didn't even think she'd read my DM. I just sent one. I'm like, yo, I have this little brand over here. You want to do something? And she was like, I love your stuff. And she had like ordered things. And I was so stoked on that, to be able to do that. And so hopefully that one will come to life. And I think it's one thing that's been really neat is like the Zooms we've had together talking about our communities, like even just wording, like they use the word deadly all the time in their stuff, like just little things like that. I'm like, you guys say that too? And so like it's very, and even just they had a very similar residential school experience. And so we've been able to learn about each other and to share those. And I think that's very important as far as growing as a community, is understanding the deep roots that colonization has, not just here, but everywhere. And as we begin to understand these things, I think then we'll have the tools to then flip colonization on its head and bury it and move on from it. Because I think capitalism, a lot of that stems from that. And as we break these barriers down, then we can teach other people how to like create community and do this in a healthier way. And I think it's needed, and it's needed for all of us to just take care of ourselves and each other better.
Yeah, the federal government through Global Affairs has, they do trade missions, and they have consulates who focus in different areas, and fashion is one of them. And so we're just starting to explore some of those partnership opportunities. So this is great. It's kind of opened my mind to some ideas as well around that. So thanks, guys. I think it's time for questions from our audience. Does anyone have any questions for our panel? There's a mic, right? Sorry, what is... I feel like I forgot my instructions for...
Hello?
How to...
All right. It's not really more of a question. It's more of like to Dusty, right? That you have people that don't line up with your values. And it's great that you told them to, like, excuse the French, but to fuck off. It's good, right? Just continue to tell them to fuck off. If they don't line up with your values, no, that's it. Just tell them beat it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's lots of, there's even some like really cheeky ways you can do it too. It doesn't have to be so abrupt all the time. You can do it in sweet ways. It can be like a fuck off. Like yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's true. Because if it doesn't serve you, there's really no point to it. And that's kind of the reason that I do it in that way is kind of an energy basis. Like, is this taking from me, or is this reciprocal? And does this have that give back? And yeah, if they're just coming to take from you, then there's no point to sacrifice yourself for that. And there's, as you stand up to those things, what I've noticed too is like the universe will take care of you. New opportunities will flow and come into be. And a lot of the times when I've taken that stand, yeah, it's presented itself in a different way, and it's become better and more pure.
I love how each of you did say as well, trust that feeling. Like, you know, we're often trained to ignore that feeling, and we have to trust it when we know there's something off. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
No. Thank you all. It's just been just like so much has been resonating. And I was going to say on the cousin thing, I think it's possible to have like cousin crushes, and I know two of you, but two of you've got cousin crushes, so maybe that'll manifest. I was going to ask you, like this time, this moment, not post-pandemic, but after what we've been through the last few years, and how we've kind of moved and had to think about our communities and our land, and had a little bit of quiet, some of us, for some of these conversations to emerge. It feels like a really rich time. I think there's a lot happening in the world that is devastating, but there's also this emergence happening. I'd love to know what you all are feeling right now, and if anything seems possible now that even 2 years ago didn't. And you can take that as broadly or as directly to your work. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's so interesting and nice to hear your voice in the dark over there. I actually think like the opportunity is what everyone has talked about, which is that kind of consideration and care around real meaningful relationships and doing authentic work well that also serves you and your community. But I'm actually a little concerned about backslide and retrenchment. And maybe that's not a positive thing to say right now, but like I think in this like huge wave of social change, there's been the beginning of really righting so much historical wrong and opportunities. But I also think along the lines of kind of tokenism and box checking, there's the risk of people inviting people into spaces, not actually having the support systems to support them. And then I'm hearing about a lot of people either quitting roles or being let go unfairly or not being in good relationships. So I'm just like, how do we create, I'm curious about how does it be a sustainable change that is good for BIPOC folks and others and not a momentary wave that doesn't carry forward. Yeah.
I think that's why the work we're doing is so important, right? Like, and the value, being driven by these values is so urgently necessary in this moment. Do you guys feel that? Or?
Yeah, I agree. I know for me, like being here, it's kind of surreal because I was a late addition. I wasn't even supposed to really participate in this festival, and oddly enough, like when the pandemic first started, I had just accepted a job full time, and I was basically ready to quit the brand. I was like, I don't have time. I'm not feeling it. I'm not inspired. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be the best. I'm gonna be able to design while we're stuck at home, and nothing got done, right? Like I couldn't design. It was like a creative dead zone. And then you fast forward 2 years, and like last fall, I quit that job and decided to do the brand full time. And now all these doors are reopening for me, and new opportunities, and creatively I'm feeling inspired, and watching the business blossom is really cool. But then at times I'm like, I look at the world and, the climate and all this stuff, and I'm like, man, are we just part of this? So we have this like, it's like a double-edged sword sometimes. And so I struggle a lot with the industry that we're a part of that is one of the biggest polluters in the world, right? And so sustainability, like Dusty was saying, is how do we become more sustainable in our practice and what we do? And it's a challenge when, it's not, like financially, it's hard to be sustainable. Everything costs more, and your customers, and do you price them out of products because they can't afford to buy expensive stuff? Like there's all kinds of things that I feel right now in the position we're in, but, here and now, it's really exciting to be here and to see the show last night and be inspired by all the stuff that these amazing artists are putting out on the runway and tonight. And I'm excited to see what Dusty's put together. And it's really good to be here. So.
Yeah, it's been an interesting experience for me too throughout this last 2 years. What got me into Mobilize was working with Indigenous youth as a mentor, as a big brother, big cousin in different ways. And the last space that I was a part of is an art facility in Edmonton. It's in the inner city. It's a space where you can come and express yourself through art. A lot of those people are coming from the childcare system, don't really have the family and support networks to navigate, and this space serves mostly Indigenous youth. And I had worked in that space for a couple years, and it had just gotten so gross. We had a non-Indigenous executive director and an all non-Indigenous board leading this space that did not align the values of the young people. And they spoke these words, they're youth-led all the time. So I had begun challenging that, because I wasn't just going to stay quiet. I would challenge it in meetings. I would take things to the board. I would present what the young people were saying. I'm like, you guys are not listening to them. You're not doing this. You're not fostering this space. It's a beautiful space. It's a cool opportunity to be able to, within this space, there's a music studio, fashion studio, spray paint booth, art studio. So you can go there and create anything you want for free. You can create music for free. You can create fashion for free. All the machines that you could dream of are there. So all the tools are there. But when you create a toxic environment for these young people, they don't want to be around. And it was just really gross to see. So I would challenge them, because that's just what I've been taught. That's what my elders have taught me. That's why I say, speak from your gut. When you feel that, speak up. So I would do that. And as soon as the pandemic hit, I became the only person laid off due to the pandemic, because I was challenging. And so the reason that I got into Mobilize full-time is because I had no job. And so I had 3 kids at that point, not knowing a 4th one was coming. And so now I have no full-time gig. That was my full-time gig. I don't regret speaking up. I don't care that they let me go for those reasons. I would do it again. But it pushed me into Mobilize full-time. And in a pandemic, it was very interesting, because then it made me figure out how to do this thing in more efficient ways. That was when kind of the Zoomies opportunity came up to be in their stores. That was a dream that I had, which now I've backpedaled on, because I've learned, like, for myself, that retail isn't the route that I want to take. It's producing too much product for myself, and it's not serving my community. It's bringing a new customer base that doesn't align with my values. And I've never had as nasty of customers as the non-customers that I have, that just like, why is it this much? Why is it this? And they have so many questions. They don't understand where it comes from, or even the upcycled element to it. And so that's why I've begun doing things in the way that I have. And that's why over the next year, you'll see a lot more upcycled stuff. I've been going to a lot of like flea markets and markets to find product and to print on and to bring things in a new way. I think, especially for fashion, like, we need to become more sustainable, and to keep producing things isn't healthy for the environment. My auntie is one of the leading people here when it comes to climate change, and she's brilliant, so she checks me all the time. And so I think it's important to have family there that checks on these things too, to make sure that your values are aligned. And I think it's a cool moment. I think something about now is that our generation is nothing compared to the generation that's coming. This young generation, they're not gonna take no shit. They're gonna flip this whole thing. And so I feel like in my role, all I need to do is kick down a few doors and open those spaces. And when the next generation comes, they're gonna change everything. They have all the ideas, they have all the energy. I see it even with my children. It's just about opening those doors for them and showing them possibility and teaching them that they need to go after their dreams, and that we can create holistic communities again. One really cool thing that I've started to talk to people about is like trading block values, getting away from monetary exchange and finding ways to take care of each other through trade again. And so I'm gonna figure that one out. I don't know how to create apps and stuff, but I would love to create an app of a trading block where we have a new way to exchange things with each other. Like if I need a Section 35, like, yo, I got a bunch of Legos. You want to trade for that? And just things like this, you know, and find new ways. And maybe his kids need some Lego.
Yeah, I love Lego.
Yeah, so I think it would be a really cool way, or even just to pass things along. Like even my closet, like I got too much Mobilize in my own closet. Like I need to share that with people. So that's how I do it, is I give things away all the time to my friends, my people. I'm like, here, I got like 15 hoodies right now. That's ridiculous. So have these. And I think even when it comes to like the houseless population or the inner city, like we need to start doing those things so that we can take care of them. It's too long to wait for like the city and the government to try to do it, because they've already showed us they can't, and they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to take care of our communities. And that was part of what I learned working in nonprofits, is that a lot of it's just a stamp. They're just checking a box, but they're not there to actually do the work. They're not there to actually heal the communities. And so we got to do it. And so I think it's just that. So I'm going to keep kicking down as many doors as I can. And it'll change. And the future is beautiful. And yeah, you'll see it. It's all going to change.
There's another question.
Yeah.
Sorry?
You just agree. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
hello,
go
good
ahead.
afternoon. My name is Aneta. I represent the Department of Canadian Heritage. I just wanted to complement what Kerry was saying in terms of Global Affairs Canada and how they organize trade missions. We, Canadian Heritage, the Department of Canadian Heritage, under the Creative Export Strategy, we are the only federal department that organizes creative industries specific trade missions and some events. So Kerry was part of our latest mission to Europe with the Indigenous Screen Office, and we're very happy that you were able to join us. So actually, as a potential future trade mission, we are considering Australia and New Zealand.
Yep.
So because, as you mentioned, for the reasons.
So what she's saying, Dusty, is London Fashion Week, here you come.
I'm ready.
So I actually have a question, a very practical question, because we try to raise awareness in terms of our programs and potential future events. We advertise it on our website and social media, and we distribute that information through industry associations. But how, from your perspective, how do we reach a wider audience, especially an audience that might be a bit underrepresented for certain opportunities, such as Indigenous entrepreneurs, BIPOC entrepreneurs? How do we reach you to let you know here's something that you might be interested in applying for and participating in? Thank you.
I often suggest that you partner with organizations that are grassroots, connected, on the ground level to the people you want to reach. So partnering with IFA, we have a large social media. Like if we posted that information on social media or IFA, would you find it? Or is there a better way?
Yeah, quicker than
You'd
quicker
find
than like a
it.
government site or different things. Because like I'm also skeptical about a lot of things. So when it comes from a certain source, that helps. So like finding the people that are already a part of those communities, that already do that work, that are already on the ground. I think that's very important to be able to, because it's cool to hear about that, but I didn't know these things existed.
And it's interesting that you said that, because a lot of people are skeptical about working with certain government organizations or certain institutions or certain corporations, and so often, there is that third-party role of vetting those relationships and also making sure that they're in the best interest of the artists.
Well, that's kind of what I was just going to say, is like, if it's coming from someone like IFA who we trust and we know, you kind of can think, well, it's probably been vetted, So I'm more likely to look at something that comes from somebody I know rather than randomly going on a government site or institution trying to find programs, right? Like if someone, like you guys sent it to me, then I'd be like, okay, maybe I'll take a look at this then.
Yeah.
So.
I think communicating in through networks and on-the-ground networks of practitioners is 100%. But I mean, I also know on the heritage front, there's regional reps for different parts of this country, and a number of them are racialized folks. And I actually don't know of any kind of town hall or person to person. Obviously, we've been in a pandemic, information sessions around it. Like I actually happen to know someone, Seema Jaitlal, who works for Heritage, who started at Manifesto, which is a community-based org. But I don't know if there's ever been like a gathering to talk about this export strategy.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. Often some of the arts councils do really proactive information sessions for their clients, but Heritage tends to do that less so that's something, that's good advice, good feedback.
Yeah, and I think it comes from like that, like you take care of your people. And that's been the success of even the capitalists. Like they've taken care of each other. That's why they have that down, even though it's very unhealthy. But we were talking about it last night at the after party, just all the different artists in the room and all the people there. I'm like, this is the kind of networking that we need. Like you get to meet all those people. Like this is my first time in Toronto, and I got to meet all these cool Toronto niches that I've been like following on Instagram forever. I'm like, yo, here they are in real life, and that's really cool to see. It's cool to be a part of, and yeah, the trust element is huge, and you have to be able to trust that. And also, like when it comes to the younger generation, like it's diversifying. Like I'm trying to learn TikTok because everything's on TikTok, man, and I don't even know how to do it. My dancing's weird and shit, so.
Yeah, I'm like a boomer
yeah.
when it comes to social media.
But it's huge, and it's also like it's generational, and it's gonna move. And like my children, they love YouTube again. And like I remember, like when I was young, like, YouTube was a thing, and now it's like coming back, and they're all about these YouTubers and Jojo Siwa and all these. So I have to do their hair like Jojo Siwa. Sometimes I have to do my hair like Jojo Siwa and stuff. But like it's also just getting to going to their level. That was part of why I do streetwear. Was because the young people I was working with, that's what they loved, that's what they repped. And so I wanted to be able to pass those stories through something that we had in common, something that was mutual. So I think that's very important when you're trying to pass knowledge or pass information to people, is to meet them on their level and to find a way to do that and be creative with it.
And as a mediator, as someone who I work as a funder, I work as a kind of connector between artists and opportunities. And I spend a lot of time asking people what they need. And I think that's good advice for Heritage or anyone else looking to create those connections. Just like ask people, what do you need? What do you want? How can I help you? Like, what can we do? And whenever I talk to artists, I just ask that question: what do you need? What do you dream of doing? And sometimes you just store that information in the vault, and then the opportunity emerges later, and you think, "Oh, I remember that person mentioned that they wanted to do that," and you can connect the dots. And I think sometimes, again, that's like that extra level of care that you have to put into this work if you really want to create those opportunities.
Can I add one quick thing, Kerry? Can I add one quick
Yes,
thing? Because we
please.
brought up also wariness around large institutional spaces, whether it's Foot Locker or XYZ. I think it's also we're in this moment where there's advocates on the inside too. And we were talking about that with, I'm not going to say, but a potential sponsor where there's an Indigenous lead on a sponsorship inside, or Wanda's work within a museum context, or many, many people. So I think it's also about building bridges from both sides. And who's on the inside, who's advocating for community, and how do you just create those wider doors open? One of the key things is also that it's not just one person on the inside, but multiple people. And
those bridges, and,
That's right.
and we always recommend that at the institutional level. Like the best way to engage with Indigenous people is hire someone Indigenous on your team, and that's a great first step, if anything. Was there another question? Riley.
Ojo, partnerships with schools and education on your mind, or dreams of partnering with schools? I mean, lots of community orgs, but the classroom as a partnership space.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best space. I've got to do a lot of keynote speaking to youth, to elementaries, to junior highs, teaching tie-dye workshops, even designing with youth. And I think it's so cool to see. And as it happens, you get to experience what those young people dream about. And I think especially when it comes to art practice, it's something that's missing from a lot of educational institutions, and it's really needed. It's needed to, like, it's such a beautiful way to express yourself, to take care of your own mental health. Like when I'm not doing good mentally, like I can't create, I can't do art. I have to take care of myself first. And I think being in those spaces, you get to teach them about that. You get to talk about that. And I think it's important to talk about those things. Most of the time when I talk to young people or I'm in schools, my whole intention is just to be open about my own mental health journey, and to also, as best I can, teach them that they deserve to dream and they deserve to go after it. And I think our young people, they need that, and they need that mentorship. I know when I was young, I needed that too, and still look for it, and sometimes don't have it. And so that's why I'm willing to be that. And one thing that I do when I speak to these young people is I let them know, like, I'm available. Like, hit me up. Like, you want to DM me, message me, send me things. If you want to ask about what I do, you want to know where I get my hoodies, you want to know the design products that I use, or anything that you want to know, like, hit me up, ask me, and I'll tell you all the information. I think that's something that needs to happen more. Just as Indigenous people, like, we're not supposed to hoard the knowledge. We're not supposed to hoard all of those things. We're supposed to be sharing that. And so if I have tools or anything you're curious about, I also extend that to this room. If you want to know about anything, hit me up and I'll share it with you. I'll tell you where or how that happened. I'm happy to do that, and I'm honored, even if you have those questions or if I can support your journey in any way. So I think it's really important, especially for the young generation. And I think those little experiences with my kids have taught me that, and taught me the value of that. And that's why I continue to do that.
Yeah, I think schools, art and all of that stuff that Dusty just talked about, I'm kind of the same way. I've done a lot of workshops speaking with youth on entrepreneurship, art, fashion. I think, for me personally, like, I come probably, like, the way I was raised, like, when I actually wanted to be an artist and shift into art, like, I felt like people didn't take me seriously. There's like an older generation of, there's a pressure to, you got to go to school, you have to get a day job, and you have to, like, be a productive, person in society. And there's that, like, old mentality that it exists. And, a lot of people, when I told them I want to start a clothing brand and that's what I want to do, like, I don't think anybody took, like, even my mom didn't really take me seriously, right? Here I am, like, 6 years later doing it full time, and I think it's important, for my own kids to see that I can, what I'm doing. Like, my oldest he's 13, he's just starting to pay attention to, like, what I wear and clothes and the stuff that we make, and he's like, people know who your brand is, and he's, like, really surprised at all the stuff that we make, so I think it's really cool when the kids can see that, right? Like, I didn't grow up around, a lot of artists and stuff, but I've always been drawn to it, and so I want my kids to be and they're drawn to art, they like to, same with Dusty, like, I've got stuff, they've designed T-shirts and stuff, and they really like drawing and coloring and all that stuff. And so I think, like, that spark that you can ignite in the youth is important. And, like, probably some of the most fulfilling stuff I get is when someone emails me or messages me and says, "You inspired me to start a brand," or, and I've had a couple of those, and it's like, that's crazy, because I remember when I got inspired and an artist inspired me and supported me, and now those people are friends of mine and colleagues of mine, and so it's kind of like this beautiful cycle of, like, inspiration. And I think, like, the next generation is gonna just be crazy, like, the stuff that the next generation is gonna do. Like, I think Dusty's spot on. We can just kick the door open for them, and, like, dude, they're gonna blow it out of the water. I can't wait to see what's gonna happen. So,
mentoring on the college level right now with kind of a next gen of arts leaders, administrators, curators at Humber. And that's been amazing. Meeting weekly, they're building out programming, they're from everywhere. And, I don't need to say it again, it's exactly that. I think it's like this cuspy moment, and if we can push it, it's for them to walk through. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that as, partnering as educators yourself. It's inspiring you and moving your work in new directions and keeping you relevant as well. Like, again, it's that reciprocal approach to these relationships that's really so important.
I mean, for me, I'm like, man, can I hire some of these kids to come? Just like TikTok, I'm like, I'm a boomer when it comes to social media. It's just, but my kids are so in tune with it, YouTube, and they know all the TikTok dances, and I'm like, man, I'm getting old, so like we're gonna have to be, I'd love to tap into that next generation because give them a platform to show what they can do, right? So
And they keep us humble.
Yeah. I'm still trying to convince my kids that mobilize is cool. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Is someone standing there at the mic?
I'm here. I just wanted to say thank you for, all your knowledge and wisdom that you're giving us tonight. I'm actually a mother of an aspiring fashion designer that I led up to late at the party. Just want to know, so that's it. Just keep, I brought her up here from Pennsylvania. I saw you guys, when it said you changed your names, but it was on a travel magazine. Can you believe it? Somebody let me borrow a travel magazine, and I saw it there, and it just inspired me because she wants to do this. She wants to be you, or be beside you guys, I guess I would say. I think she even said, she doesn't want, the big name brand. She just wants a brand that is sustainable and helps with, I don't know, she's just amazing, just like you guys. And I wanted to just ask, am I doing everything correctly to help her aspire to her dreams?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
If you're there supporting her doing this, that's beautiful, and it's needed. And coming to these kinds of events are very, very special for that dreaming. And as we deconstruct capitalism, there's going to be so much opportunity and so much need, especially on a local basis, in different ways. We're going to need more creatives as we start to bring down these corporations.
And I appreciate that. And I think we'll see you in 2 years.
Yeah,
right?
And there's room for everybody. I think that's part of it too, is that we don't need to compete with each other. We don't need to challenge each other, that there is room for everyone. And I think that's just very true about even Section 35 and Mobilize. We're two very similar brands, but there's space for everybody. There's space for, I like to tell the youth that I work with, if you want to create a streetwear brand and it's similar to Mobilize, I'm going to still be your #1 fan, and I'm going to be cheering you on. And if you create something that's better than mine, then that's amazing. Hell yeah, let's do it. And I think it's because that art, it flows from us all in different ways, and it's going to come out in different ways, and there's stories that need to be told. And I think that's part of our healing as a people, is bringing those stories back and bringing that experience back. And I think art has that power, and it has that energy to just do that. And I'm sure she has stories to tell, and if she wants to come and chat and do any of that, that's what these moments and these events are for. I'll be in the marketplace, so if she wants to chat at any point, let her know.
I think it's important, right, to come and be here, and it kind of puts everything at reach, right? You can touch it, you can feel it, and you can come and talk to Dusty or me or all the other artists, and I think you're doing the right thing, right? I wish I had parents that pushed in that direction, right? And I think good kudos to you.
Thank you. I just didn't have that either growing up. So I'm wait a minute, this is what you want to do? And, I just wanted to assist her and not say, hey, there's something else out there. There's college, there's this, there's that. I do suggest having having more than one thing, but I don't know if that's a bad thing. I don't want to say, oh, you're going to, how do you say that? Just in case?
I mean, yeah, I guess the backup plan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was always, well, you better have a backup plan. And I'm like, well, I don't, but, I'll just say I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's a great note to end on. We've got to let Dusty go set up for Marketplace, so you can visit Mobilize there. And you're doing runway tonight, right?
No, Sunday night. We're both
Saturday night and you're Sunday night?
No, we're
No,
both
we're
Sunday
both
night.
Sunday, yeah.
Okay, you both Sunday. Sorry. I know I should know this, but I want to thank all of you. It's been a great conversation and a real pleasure to chat with each of you. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.